Welcome to the island of Stonewater. Here, nobody owns a clock, and property records don't exist on paper or in any database. Instead, the island's economy runs on massive, ancient limestone disks. The value of these stones has absolutely nothing to do with their size or their mineral makeup. To get a stone, islanders had to sail across dangerous, open ocean to a distant cliff face called the Deep Quarry. They carved the limestone by hand, built a raft in the water, and risked their lives to bring it back. That physical cost is the stone's actual worth. Because the ocean is treacherous and the carving takes weeks, nobody can simply create new wealth out of thin air. The community only recognizes a stone if it carries the undeniable weight of that human effort. This creates a rigid, uncheatable economic system. Value cannot be declared by a king or assigned by a committee. It has to be earned through verifiable physical work. Without paper records, the island relies entirely on a single human institution to keep track of who owns what. Grandmother Noah is the current rememberer. Every evening, she recites the history of the island's 41 stones to her 10-year-old apprentice, Mara. Together, they hold the entire financial ledger of the community exclusively in their minds. Take the harbor stone. It sank to the bottom of the bay during a storm 40 years ago. Nobody has seen it since. But because the entire island watched it go down, everyone agrees it still belongs to the exact same family. Ownership and physical possession are completely separated. The system works flawlessly, but it has a strict biological limit. A society can only run entirely on shared memory if it has exactly 41 stones and a population small enough for one woman to memorize every transaction. You cannot run a global economy on the recollections of a village elder. So, as human society expanded across continents, we had to leave this trustless, self-contained system behind. In the story of Stonewater, this pressure to scale arrives as a trader named Callow. He sails into the harbor with a boat full of smooth stones, pale, perfectly round discs that he produced in the northern islands without making a dangerous crossing, without spending weeks carving, and absolutely without risking anyone's life. The islanders eagerly trade for these easy stones, but within weeks, the price of rice shoots up. The amount of rice hasn't changed, but because there is a flood of new stones, every single stone buys slightly less than it could yesterday. This is the exact trade modern society made. We moved away from physically anchored money, currencies originally tied to the real-world cost of mining gold or silver, and adopted fiat currencies that central banks can print without any physical constraint. When a currency costs nothing to create, its supply expands endlessly, and as the supply expands, the purchasing power of the people holding it steadily rots away. Callow attempts to overwrite the island's history by presenting an official-looking paper document to claim ownership of the Wrenstone. This mirrors the pivot in human history, when we stopped trusting our neighbors and started carving transactions into ledgers we could store away. Mara stops him by turning to the market crowd. She recites the true story of the stone, naming the men who sacrificed everything, and the crowd backs her up. One by one, the villagers confirm the history out loud. In the real world, we faced a similar crossroads and took the opposite path. As communities grew too large for oral histories, we moved our financial ledgers from the public square into closed books kept by banks and governments. Mara defeats the forged document because a truth held by an entire community simultaneously cannot be hacked or quietly rewritten. When you rely on a paper system, you are entirely dependent on the honesty of the single person holding the pen. On Stonewater, the community rejects the traitor and preserves their system. But in human history, Callow won. We embraced the easy money and the official paper records. To make global trade possible, we standardized our value. We took the specific human journeys, the names, and the sacrifices out of the transaction, replacing them with identical, mass-produced coins that were completely interchangeable. That standardization eventually required giant institutions to manage the flow of identical money. We gave up the ability to verify the ledger ourselves, handing power over to central banks, trusting them to manage the books behind closed doors. This leaves our modern economy operating on a vulnerable foundation. We rely on opaque institutions we cannot audit, using money that is entirely decoupled from the physical constraints of the real world. For centuries, this seemed like a permanent trade-off for scaling society. Then, modern computer science and cryptography introduced a way to rebuild Stonewater's rules for a digital, globalized world. We call it proof of work. It acts as a digital deep quarry. Just like hauling limestone, a computer network must expend verifiable physical energy to create a new unit of value. You cannot simply print it. Instead of hiding records inside a central bank, a public blockchain acts as the new rememberer. The ledger copies itself across thousands of computers worldwide. Every single participant can read and verify the entire history of transactions. We are building the tools to stop delegating our trust. We are finally returning to an architecture where value requires effort, ownership is mathematically proven, and the ledger belongs to everyone who uses it.